Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Talent Views. My name is Anu Rao, and I lead marketing at the Indotronics Avani Group, one of the largest staffing companies in the United States. We connect clients with best fit talent across North America, Europe, and India. Today, we are talking about what it takes for staffing companies to evolve from being seen as yet another transactional vendor to true strategic partners to both clients and candidates. Joining us today is Andy Weiss, the Chief Marketing Officer at Ceipal, where he uses frameworks, systems, and brand story to make marketing clear and effective. He's led work for iconic brands like Oscar Mayer and State Farm, and now drives Ceipal's growth in staffing and healthcare. Andy believes the best marketing isn't just storytelling. It's building systems that earn trust and fuel growth. Welcome, Andy, to our virtual stage.
Awesome. Great to be here, Anu. I'm looking forward to our chat today and connecting with your listeners.
Thank you. So let's dive right in. One concept that you talk a lot about, and I'm absolutely fascinated with, is inversion marketing and the power it has to elevate any industry. Now, for those of us who are new to the concept, what is inversion marketing at a very high level?
Yeah, so Anu, I'm going to kind of rewind that a little bit in the sense that to answer your question and help everyone understand what inversion is or inversion marketing is, it may help to better understand kind of how I approach marketing at first and foremost. And so for me, I believe marketing at its best isn't just about telling brand stories or generating demand, but it's also, in a sense, about reducing risk. And so for me, I use frameworks or mental models as a way to kind of cut through a lot of the clutter and get to kind of the core of an idea, a problem, or a challenge. And so some of those frameworks that I tend to use, and you can Google it and ask AI about a lot of these and a lot of different ones, but things like Occam's razor to simplify a concept down, or first principles to kind of get to the root of something, or reciprocity to build trust, or even like the paradox of choice to kind of simplify things down and reduce friction. But one of my favorites is, as you mentioned, is inversion, and it's the idea of asking not how do we succeed, but rather how would I fail at this? How would we not get the outcome that we want? And so kind of inverting it. And it's a concept that Warren Buffett's right-hand man, Charlie Munger, would use a lot to kind of unpack an idea or a concept. And the simplicity or the core essence of inversion is about asking that question in the reverse and using it to kind of uncover blind spots and things that kind of help us approach a problem or a challenge from a different aspect. So bringing it back to staffing and recruiting, oftentimes, staffing and recruiting, if we boil down the essence of what we do and from a staffing and recruiting and talent management standpoint, it can be, not that it is, but it can be seen as a bit like a commodity in the sense that we're all dealing with people, and it's not about, or one of the things that we'll unpack is we all have access to the same pools of talent in essence. And so that helps us commoditize, or helps kind of draw the parallel to a commodity. But at its core, staffing isn't just like a commodity, but it's also about risk mitigation. It's about trust building. It's about strategic talent fit. And so if we think about inversion and not asking about how we succeed or how we fail, it's about applying that question. It's how do we find great hires that don't leave in 60 days, or how do we improve retention? And so it's kind of the reverse question. Like, so much of our time and energy is focused from a staffing standpoint on filling a role in the next role. But if we ask it differently, how do we ensure that the person that we're putting in that role for a client or a customer, how do we ensure that that person stays longer, and in essence kind of gets rid of a future opportunity for us because we're not filling their replacement, but we're building goodwill. And so we're inverting the question and asking it in a different fashion. So that's inversion at its core.
Thank you so much, Andy. And one of the things that struck me in what you said was reducing risk mitigation. At the end of the day, we might use fancy words, but in the world that we operate, whether you're a procurement team or whether you're procurement facing, that is one of the biggest things, building trust, risk mitigation. And that is the baseline. That is what we are trying to achieve. We might be using other terms, but our ultimate objective is that. And that helps give stage to the next question that I have, which most staffing companies struggle with, right? One of the biggest challenges we face is earning candidate trust. Now, keeping with the theme that you're asking, my question to you would be, what are the things a staffing company can do to convey the image that it's a fake company, whether it is the job postings or recruiter outreach? What does a staffing company do to convey the image of being a fake company?
Okay, so let's kind of break that down at its core. If we were So we want to present ourselves not as a fake company. So what would it look like to be a fake company? Well, that would entail generic ads, generic job posts, faceless recruiter outreach, maybe silence, or ghosting or breaking kind of a communication flow between a candidate and a recruiter. So if that's what that looks like, then what we need to do in order to build that candidate trust is essentially do the opposite. And we can't claim trust, because that in and of itself is artificial. So we need to signal it. So what are the different ways that we can signal that we are real? Maybe it's, sharing recruiter identities. Maybe it's, in a lot of states, pay salary ranges have to be communicated, and so adding some clarity around that. Having maybe internally you have some response SLAs to ensure that you're responding to candidates in a timely fashion, and we're in some sense over communicating with some of your candidates, and just kind of like as you would want a friend or a confidant to communicate with you. Hey, Anu, I don't have anything to share with you today, but I just wanted to let you know that we're still, the client is still having some ongoing conversations around that. So I just wanted you to know that, hey, we haven't forgotten about you, but it's still in a holding pattern. Little things like that signal to a candidate and a pool of candidates that, you're not, that you're real, and that you're not fake, and doing that with a consistent voice and tone across all the staff in your firm, is a really good way of kind of establishing that confidence and that trust among candidates.
I really liked one thing that, I loved your whole answer, but one resonated with me. And you said, we cannot claim trust because that in itself is artificial.
Yeah.
That's something you have to build through all those little actions, which you mentioned.
Yeah. So to further illustrate that, like in a, pre-Ceipal, there was a event software company that I was running marketing for, and we faced a similar type challenge where, it was a 30-plus-year-old brand company, and we needed to demonstrate to others that we were, a leader, that we were, continued to be relevant and modern. And in a similar fashion from building trust, we couldn't just say we were modern. We had to do things that signaled it. And so in a similar type fashion, and at an inversion standpoint, we said, okay, well, what would it look like for us to not be old and stodgy, but for us to be modern? And then ask the opposite. And those are the types of things that we then started to do and build up. And oftentimes it's the actions that we take that over time establish that thread that, oh, I've seen you here, you treated me this way here, you communicated to me in this fashion, in this particular instance, and it's the sum total of all those touch points that builds and establishes that trust. And that's what we need to keep in mind as marketers or operators of firms.
Uh, 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 the direction you're going, it reminds me of one particular incident that we had recently.
Mhm.
We had a candidate who ended up not working with us because he did not probably qualify for the interview. I forget the exact background, but he was so happy with the experience that he had with us, the experience he had with the recruiter. He still wrote us a long email telling us what a pleasure it was to work with us.
Mhm.
So it really doesn't matter whether they work with us or not, they should still have a good experience with us.
Yeah, because it's not just about that individual experience. I mean, it is in essence, you're a broker. You're bringing
Mhm,
two parties together,
mhm,
and there are a number of ways, even within that, to create differentiation. But an easy one is building strong relationships and ensuring that even if somebody doesn't get a job or a role that they may have been hoping for, at the end of the day, it needs to be the right fit for both client and candidate.
mhm,
But that doesn't mean that that candidate is not a good fit for the next one or the one after that. And
mhm,
so the more you build up that kind of pool of high caliber, highly qualified candidates, now that's half the equation. Now, if you bring that to your clients and customers, now you're bringing a higher caliber and quality of product or
mhm,
talent to them, and
mhm.
and in essence raises all ships because of that. And so don't just because somebody, to your point, didn't get a role doesn't mean that you don't need to you know treat them nicely kind of coming off of it and send them a generic note. But if you spend a little bit more time personalizing it or responding in a human fashion,
Mhm.
it will go a long way.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, Now, this whole concept of looking at it the other way, what can we do to um, what will make sure that the thing fails? That brings me to another aspect of the staffing industry. You touched upon it briefly, and that is differentiation, right?
Mhm.
For most people, one staffing company seems very similar to another, both from the client perspective and from the candidate perspective. Now, my first question is more from a client perspective. Now, what makes every staffing firm sound exactly like everyone else, like yet another resume shop, right?
Mhm.
Like what common promises like speed, volume, risk mitigation, cost ensure that staffing companies look like a commodity?
Yeah. So you just identified like speed, cost, quality, risk mitigation. Like, okay, every firm can say the same thing. And
Uh-huh.
at the end of the day, it just ends up being white noise. And so it's not like every firm can deliver on those things. The moat around that is non-existent if it is, it's not deep and it's not wide. So then how do you create something? Well, that starts to get at how not just how you deliver, but how you think, how you respond. And so um, it's about that voice, how you show up. It's that experience that you create for others, and it's the uh, it's creating that um, that human component. It's showing up in a different fashion. Like there's a lot of noise around like AI recruiters and the ability um, to automate a lot of the process these days. So how do you do the inverse of that? And that's something in another category I faced a similar challenge where we had a bunch of sub of brands and sub brands where we created some of our own confusion. And so how do you kind of create some differentiation with it in that. And I would look at things like, are there quality promises? Are there guarantees that you can potentially offer? Is it how you treat people? Is it things like helping to better understand your client or your customer's process, and not just you're being hired to kind of to find talent and mitigate some of the risk that they have, instead, so they don't have to go through 100, 500, 1,000 resumes to try and find one. So there's some risk there, but really understanding the root of the job rec, and how this person is going to fit within the team, within the organization. Why is this role available? And really kind of trying to unpack some of the story between the lines, and taking the time to do that with each and every one of your clients will start to demonstrate that whether it's Indotronic, Avani, or any other firm, that you're spending the time and energy to really bring more of a white glove type human aspect to it, that an AI agent today cannot necessarily deliver upon. It's not to say that we shouldn't be using AI, but it's that human piece that can help feed the AI engines, and help create differentiation for the firm.
To a certain extent, AI definitely probably helps create a level playing ground and elevates the playing ground. But that human element, that, as you said, the white glove service, and I love the way you put it, the story between the lines, the how you go above and beyond with your time and energy to understand each one of your clients. That's critical in differentiating one staffing company from another.
And agreed. And the other thing that we need to kind of keep top of mind from an AI standpoint is AI is not exclusive to the recruiter or the client in this scenario, but the candidate also has access to some of those same tools. And so it may provide you or your firm or your client an edge, but it's also doing the same thing for candidates as they're using it to, here's a job description, here's my resume, help me figure out whether I'm a match or not. If I'm a 90% match, how do I close the final 10? What are the keywords? What are the themes? What are the things that I need to bolster to ensure that I cut through the noise from a candidate standpoint? So AI is a tricky one. And so that's why, even when I was thinking about differentiation, it was like, AI is the tool. It's not the means to the differentiation. It's the things that, the AI can't do, that your recruiters, your team, your staff can do for a client, that no one else is going to take the time or the energy. If it's hard for your firm to do it, then it's hard for others. And so just because it's hard doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. If everyone thinks it's hard and you're the one that shows up and does it, and it's meaningful to client X, then that's going to be the differentiator for your firm in that relationship with client X. And then if you can figure out how to replicate it and scale that, then that's a little bit more of a moat and differentiation that you're able to create. So it's looking for those opportunities.
So if it's hard for me and it's hard for others, does not mean that we don't do it. Yeah. What a great takeaway from this response. Thank you so much, Andy. You already touched upon a little bit about what I'm going to ask you next, but to dive into it further, why would a candidate believe we are just another agency trying to push them into a role? And how can we use this info to market ourselves as a career partner instead?
I think you answered the question in your earlier example about the candidate that had a really positive experience who did not get the job. Because you think about it from from a candidate's perspective. There's the high of, I just got a new role and I'm excited about this opportunity. And there's the emotion or the the sadness, the disappointment that comes from not getting it. And those are two extremes. And there's a lot of room in between and the waiting game and all this stuff. But being able to share in the excitement and those, the congratulations and stuff, but then also be empathetic
Mm-hmm.
and um and share and kind of it's not necessarily coaching, but provide some guidance, provide some insight that helps that candidate, you know, for the next time. And it's that kind of relationship where you as a candidate have worked with a particular recruiter or a firm time and time again, because in this day and age, particularly with AI, there's already a decent amount of shifting depending on and transition depending on the industry. But now
Mm-hmm.
AI is starting to kind of accelerate some of that. So the candidate experience and understanding where somebody is and what's maybe next in their growth trajectory can help, to your question, start to not full on do coaching and career development, but you're an asset or an ally um, with that individual as they're thinking about, okay, I didn't get this opportunity. What do I need to do? What's missing?
Mm-hmm.
Let me go out and get that so that I can get these types of roles the next time. Or do I need to, within my current organization, what can I do to kind of advance stuff to make sure that I'm more marketable, not only within my own company, but for
Mm-hmm.
that next opportunity? And that's one of the things that, even within my marketing team, like we were talking about as a team this morning, how we use AI. Like, we're not, as marketers, we're not going to necessarily get replaced by AI. We're going to get replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI. And so
Mm-hmm.
our mission within our team is to help each other get smarter about AI, because if I'm happy when my team, gets an opportunity and moves on, because it represents, hopefully, the fact that we've upskilled, we've created excitement and value, not only for our organization, but in the type of work that as team members and individuals in the marketing group are doing cool things, and so they're getting new opportunities because of that. And so AI kind of fit, and how we're thinking about AI kind of fits into that. It's like Ceipal benefits, marketing benefits, the individual benefits. We need to be sharing some of that stuff. And if a staffing or recruiting firm can kind of help tap into that a little bit, then back to our earlier discussion about kind of candidates and building that pipeline and that relationship. Now they want to work with you. Now they're a valuable part of that part of the, the equation.
You touched on candidate experience, and that is one of the most compelling features of any staffing company, right? So when I look at it from an inverse marketing viewpoint, what can a staffing firm do to ensure a bad candidate experience resulting in attrition or drop in mid-process once they have already started engaging with us?
Mm-hmm.
So during the candidate journey, it could be application, onboarding, post placement. What can a staffing firm do to break the trust?
So I think a couple things come to mind. Um, One is understanding from the client, like, why is this role open? What was the prior candidate? Was the person in this role, if it wasn't new, if it's not a new role, why was the person successful or not? And looking for some of those types of things kind of in candidates themselves. And so that's kind of the end part of the process. In the middle, it's understanding, either you have a relationship with an ongoing relationship with the client, and so taking a look at, well, why did candidates drop out? Were there, and not every job rec, not every role is going to be the same, but is there a pattern there? And so, we're dipping into a different kind of framework here, but some pattern recognition, and then an understanding, are there certain kind of markers or patterns that become apparent? And so now you've got this pool of kind of ideas or questions. Here's what was successful or not for somebody being in the role. Here's why a candidate or candidates kind of move through, but here's also why they dropped out. And so now you've got some data points where you can start to ask some inversion questions. If I want to ensure that the candidate experience is not bad, or if it had friction, how do I remove the friction at a different point? How do I ensure that if candidates in this particular role are only lasting or new hires are lasting 6 or 12 months, is there something in that particular role that makes it a challenge? Can we figure out, like, is there something that if these other individuals in the role had this other skill set, could we help figure out help identify what that might be? That it might be an off resume or off CV type thing. And so being able to identify some of those components. And then I'm assuming, as you kind of unpack a lot of that stuff, some of those things are going to be in your control, and some of those things are going to be in your client's control. And so then it comes back to that relationship piece. In the things that the firm is not in control of, but the client is, maybe having some frank conversations or some open conversations with the client. Hey, here's some patterns that we're seeing. Here's some things that help us understand why some of these processes are in place. You've got 52 rounds and several aptitude tests that you are putting candidates through, and it's a survival of the fittest. You need to find 1,000 candidates because only 1 or 2 are going to survive like all the different rounds, and viable candidates are going to drop out, not because they didn't fit, but because you put them through all of this stuff. So help us understand the hows and whys, and maybe there's some better ways of doing that. And that's kind of some counsel or some coaching that you can share with the client, but then also looking at your own processes. And are there things that we're doing as a firm that may be unintentionally causing that friction or a bad experience? And so can we improve that? Is it follow-up? Is it the language in our emails and our communications and the voicemails or the texts that we're sending? Are certain roles more responsive to a text communication? Are certain roles, are certain people more responsive to emails? Looking at it on an individual basis, and I think the sum total of that, and then asking inversion questions at different points on it, will start to kind of unpack different ways that a firm can improve that candidate experience. But if you ask me to kind of come in and say, okay, how would I unpack it for you in this particular situation, that's where I would start.
I absolutely enjoyed this response because as you were speaking, certain account managers in our team came to mind, and it kind of clicked in place for me that, oh my God, they are successful because they are asking the questions as to why they failed. And sometimes it could be our process itself. Sometimes it could be talking to the client and conveying it. But it is not a framework across the board for every staffing company. Individuals are succeeding that way. I can just imagine if it was an agile framework overall to approach every client candidate relationship like that, I can imagine the success we can have at every client.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And it comes back to, it's not easy. But if it were easy, everyone would be doing it.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we touched on the client perspective and also the candidate perspective, the candidate experience. Now, here I want to kind of combine both just so that we bring in both perspectives. And that is, if both clients and candidates ask, why should I choose you over the next staffing firm? What would be the response that would be the weakest answer?
I mean, why should it? What would be the weakest answer? It's it feels in my estimation, it feels shallow to say we fill roles quickly, and
Hmm.
now there are some roles where speed is important, but you also want to ensure the quality
Hmm.
component of that. And like I've gone through some hiring with my team, and I wanted to ensure that it wasn't just about putting somebody in the role, because I could go and find anybody, um, in theory, anybody that could do the job. But it was, what's the right fit? Taking the time to just kind of breathe and understand what that relationship is, because back to that broker analogy, it's a little bit of matchmaking, and you're trying to ensure that you know it's the right fit for both parties, because what you don't want to have another you know another opportunity coming to you from that client that is filling that same role. You'd rather, I'm assuming, have additional opportunities coming from that client based on the success of your ability to fill that. It's not, hey, Anu, I need to fill role X again. No, it's, hey, Anu, you crushed it on role X. I now have roles Y, C, A, and D for you to fill. You, you did such a great job. Can you help me with these, 3, 4, 5 other roles? And that's the way to build the business, grow the business. And because you're doing it on both sides, you're ensuring a great candidate experience. Now, when the client comes to you with these other roles, now you've got this high caliber quality candidate coming to you, and you can now fit people into the right role so that they're ultimately successful. And in my example of my marketing team going on to bigger and better things, how cool would it be to have somebody that you placed at a client firm turn around and say, hey, Anu, I'm now hiring for my team, and I had such an amazing experience with your firm. Can you help me find folks for my team? And now it's that reference, that referral becomes a customer. And that's kind of you're spreading a little bit of goodwill, and you're bringing that kind of human component and that differentiation together in terms of how you're creating a positive combined experience for both parties.
I absolutely love how we naturally fell towards the final question that I was going to ask you, the strategic partnership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Evolving from a transactional relationship, the placement mill or the resume pusher, to a strategic long term relationship with the client. And that is essentially what you were touching upon. Any final thoughts on that topic? Because that is the ultimate aim of any staffing firm.
Yeah, I think it's it's easy to fall into the resume pusher kind of mode, the spraying CVs, avoiding the hard conversations, because it's measurable. It's, here's how many phone calls, here's how many candidates I put out there, and recommended for different roles. But and candidates are doing the same thing. It's like, how many jobs did you apply for today, or if you're in the market, or and there's an inefficiency to that. It's a volume game, but it's not a good
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
Um, and so being able to step back from it and do the hard things, and build that relationship, have that positive interaction with the candidates who did not get the role for one reason or another, to really understand your client's business. And it's not about sniffing out the next opportunity, but it's understanding their business model, how they're growing or how they're thinking about things, and then aligning your organization to those types of strategies. And to kind of bring it back to, some of the things that I've been doing of late, in reorganizing my own marketing team, instead of building out the team from a functional standpoint, we've shifted to being focused on outcomes. And it's because we could, if we just focused on the functional side, we would be the equivalent of resume pushers, just pushing stuff, pushing content out, and what I refer to, or what's commonly referred to as random acts of marketing. And we wanted to stop doing that. We wanted to focus in on doing work that was meaningful. So it wasn't a quantity game, it was about quality. And this, this idea or this mantra in the marketing world of create once and distribute forever. How can we ensure that, bringing it back to staffing, how do we ensure that the person that we place today is potentially our customer tomorrow? If the candidate that I wasn't able to put into a role, ultimately they're going to find their next role, whether it's through you or not, and they're probably going to have some people that they're going to look to hire. And do they want to interact with your firm that they had a positive experience with, or one that was a resume pusher? And so that's where the strategic relationships come in. It's not about the here and now, but it's taking a little bit of a longer term view, aligning your organization, aligning your processes, aligning your messaging, your interactions around that, and putting those types of things in place. And so bringing it back to the inversion question, if we just wanted to be a volume shop, a place that was cranking rolls out and jobs out and stuff, what would that look like? And if we don't want to be like that, how do we do the opposite of that? How do we invert that? And that's where I think some of the strategic stuff we've been talking about kind of comes into play.
Absolutely love that, Andy. It is so insightful. At the core of it, what I heard you say, and you did mention it at the beginning of your response, is moving from a functional point of view to an outcome point of view. Take a long-term strategic view as to how do you want this relationship to evolve. It's not just about sending 10 resumes out today, but over the next few years and decades, how do you want that candidate to engage with you, the client to engage with you? Such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much. The inversion marketing lens really highlights how much the staffing industry can benefit from asking the right questions and flipping the script to build stronger partnerships with both candidates and clients. Thank you again, Andy.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
To everyone watching, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the Indotronics Avani Group YouTube channel for more conversations on all things talent. Until next time, thanks for listening.